I would like to thank the Ambedkar Periyar Study Circle IIT Madras for inviting me to speak on the agrarian crisis and the growing resistance. And also congratulate you for having a discussion on such an issue connected to the that young students in different campuses are coming up in support and solidarity with the farmers movement is a very heartening thing. Before I get into the topic, I would like to mention here for a wider audience that this program, which was being conducted on the Google Meet, was in a systematic manner sought to be disrupted by the Sanghi cyber goons who created a ruckus and were posting pornographic content on this. This is the level to which they can stoop while they are unable to engage in any democratic discussion or debate or come up with logical answers to the questions raised by the people, the simple farmers of our country. These are the efforts they are resorting to. If they feel that they can call down protests through threats and intimidation, they are grossly mistaken. That is what we are seeing on the streets in the last many months. Despite a pandemic, despite the lockdown and the draconian measures imposed by this BJP government, the protests are rising, they are only growing in number. We are not scared of these kind of threats and intimidation. There have been threats of arrest, threats of being jailed, and different things are happening. Friends, the topic for discussion, which our friends, young friends from IIT have asked me to speak about, is the agrarian crisis and the growing resistance. In the last 6 years, we have been seeing a huge increase in the farm protests by working class, protests by farmers, agriculture workers, the Dalits, Adivasis, the most oppressed sections. There have been protests at an independent level by these organizations representing these differences. There have also been united struggles where all these sections have come together to rise in unison against the BJP government and its policies. Why is it that these protests are rising in such a way? That is something which we need to look into, because it was with a huge popular support that in 2014, Narendra Modi and BJP had come to power. There was a lot of criticism and lot of discontent against the then Congress-led UPA government. There was an agrarian crisis, there were corruption charges. Making use of all these, an atmosphere was created wherein the BJP could successfully utilize it for electoral victory. They made very attractive promises. What were the promises? That if the BJP comes to power, they would bring good days for everyone. Achhe din aayenge. That was the slogan. And for farmers specifically, the farm sector, it was said that agrarian crisis would be done away with. It would end for farmers. Farmers' suicides would end. Farmers' incomes would doubling of farmers' incomes. Farmers' produce would be paid at least 50% more than the cost of production, and assured procurement would be ensured. The inputs for agriculture, seed, fertilizer, and other inputs would be provided at with subsidized rates cheaply. The loans for agriculture, farm loans, would be given at lower interest rates. Har khet mein pani, water to every field, and in case there is a damage of crops due to natural calamities, etc., then there would be insurance and compensation paid. And for the agriculture labor, under the NREGA, 200 days of work and increased wages. What more could one ask for? These were the demands put forward. Many of these were demands put forward by the organizations like All India Kisan Sabha, the Agriculture Workers Union, and so on. So it did manage to help the BJP to come to power, and also in certain states where BJP has never ruled, Haryana for one instance, and Maharashtra, this, with the support of the rural population, the BJP was able to come to power for the first time. In such a circumstance, once they came to power, within a few days,
we went and met the agriculture minister and requested that the main promise of providing at least 50% more than the cost of production to farmers' produce, according to the Swaminathan Commission recommendation, be implemented. And the agriculture minister, without any hesitation, he tells us, why are you taking it seriously? These are only election time promises. Every party makes promises to get votes. We cannot implement this. And within some months, we find the BJP government filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court that this cannot be implemented. Within 6 months of coming to power, the BJP government came with the land acquisition ordinance, which would facilitate corporate land grab. And this is also total reversal of their position in the BJP's 2014 election manifesto. A massive issue-based unity was built against the land acquisition ordinance, in which around the two issues of land rights and against indiscriminate land grab, around 300 organizations of farmers, agriculture workers, Adivasis, Dalits, the fishing community, and civil society groups like the Narmada Bachao Andolan, the NAPM, all of them came together to form the Bhumi Adhikar Andolan, or the land rights movement. Continuous struggles by the land rights movement, or the Bhumi Adhikar Andolan, ensured that enough pressure was built, and the BJP government, which tried to pass bring in the ordinance through the parliament 3 times, had to withhold the land acquisition ordinance. That was the first defeat suffered by the Narendra Modi-led government, which was due to the united movement of a broad cross-section of organizations representing different sections of our society, the most oppressed sections of our society. Similarly, post the Mandsaur incident, where 6 farmers were shot dead by the BJP government for asking remunerative price for their crops, another issue-based unity called the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee came into being. This initially had around 160 odd organizations of farmers. Now around 230 to 250 organizations are part of this All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee. Before the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee was formed, in the first 2 years of the BJP government, except for the protests around the land acquisition ordinance, and where independent protests by All India Kisan Sabha and such organizations against the BJP government's anti-farmer, anti-worker policies, mostly there were not all India kind of movements in this big manner. But then came the demonetization. It affected all sections, the farmers and agriculture workers in a big way, the unorganized sector workers. And then happened this Mandsaur incident also, where 6 farmers were shot. They were asking remunerative prices. This unity was around the issues of remunerative prices for their produce and freedom from indebtedness. For the first time, amidst the protest itself, a Kisan parliament, a farmers' parliament was held, which developed 2 bills and which have been placed in the parliament as private member bills. Instead of looking into any of these bills, now we see that 3 new bills. Those bills came from the grassroots. They were the articulation of the actual aspirations of the farmers of our country. But now we have, in a condition of lockdown, the BJP government has come up with the 3 farm bills in first as ordinance in first week of June. Now, before this itself, post the Mandsaur incident, numerous struggles had taken place. We have seen the Kisan Long March from Nasik to Mumbai, in which thousands of people marched under the banner of Kisan Sabha with their red flags, and a large number of them being the most deprived Adivasi and Dalit sections who were part of it. A major and land rights and forest rights was a major issue. Food security was an issue in that. You have seen struggles in Rajasthan, in Himachal, in different states of our country against these policies. That led to a situation wherein an atmosphere was created, wherein uh, in the minds of the farmers, the slogan which was very strongly imprint in we could have in the minds of the farmers, that is BJP Modi Kisan Virodhi. BJP and Narendra Modi are anti-farmer. That led to an atmosphere wherein many of the states which went to polls, there was a reaction against the BJP and BJP suffered reverses. But in the 2019 elections, making use of an ultra-nationalist campaign post Balakot, Pulwama and Balakot incidents, and with the corporate media for ample support, with a huge expenditure funded by the corporate cronies, the BJP government, the BJP managed to come back to power in 2019 with a bigger majority. And just before the elections, a new policy called the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, where 6,000 rupees, that would mean around 500 rupees per month, was announced. And on the day of polling also, the first installment came into the farmers' accounts. Their propaganda machinery also, advertising about the government policies, all these helped them to win. But neither were 2 crore jobs promised to youth implemented. Highest unemployment was existing. Private sector was given a lot of concessions, lakhs of crores of concessions. We all know what happened with Malya, Lalit Modi, Nirav Modi, and others. So that was one thing which we found. The profit-making public sector undertakings were sold, or it was many places you found people being retrenchment in many sectors. The BSNL, the manner in which it was attacked, the HAL we found unable to pay the salaries because of the policies of the government. And in the textile industry, automobile industry, about 50 lakh people lost their jobs. It is in such a circumstance in 2019 to 2020, during this period, this was the situation in our country. The agrarian crisis continued. More than about 12 to 13,000, according to official statistics, committed suicide every year in the first 5 years of Modi government. The numbers are much higher. These data are fudged. Many governments, state governments, don't give correct data even. So the agrarian crisis has continued. An economic recession kind of situation was there between in this period, and unemployment was rising. Poverty was rising. Hunger deaths were happening. We all know the global hunger index, how India is dismally placed. In such a circumstance, you also had the pandemic striking the world. In the very initial period itself, the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and other agencies did caution about this leading to a global crisis and a food crisis, and increased unemployment and poverty would be there. But instead of being prepared and planning to deal with this pandemic, for almost 3 months after the first detection of cases in Wuhan, you had the BJP government indulging in policies which lead to political polarization, communal polarization, the Citizenship Amendment Act, the Article 370 being scrapped, and so on, and the kind of suppression of protest, democratic protest that came up, peaceful protest, the manner in which it was attacked. We have seen after the Delhi assembly elections how a full-fledged communal riot was engineered, and in before the lockdown was announced, you had a mega event where the American President Donald Trump was invited, called Namaste Trump, where according to Trump, more than a million people took part in that. This is all amidst a pandemic when physical distancing was being suggested as a necessity to contain the pandemic. It is only on 22nd March, first they come up with the Janta curfew. You all know how it was, the Prime Minister made a call to bang plates and clap hands, or make, supposedly in solidarity with the health workers and sanitation staff. On 24th of March, without any consultation with state governments or political parties, the lockdown was clamped up on us. When the lockdown came about, the Indian farmers were expecting a bumper harvest. To speak about the North Indian states, wheat was cultivated in an increased 11% increase in acreage of wheat compared to last year. Many other crops, it was harvesting time, some of the pulses, cauliflower, mustard, potato, and so on. But the manner in which the lockdown was announced and implemented, um, the farmers did not have agriculture labor. We all saw how migrant workers were forced into an exodus and they were left to fend for themselves with the BJP government doing nothing to help them. No transport arranged. We all saw how hundreds of people died in this process also. So in such a circumstance, this was the biggest exodus after the partition of India. In such a circumstance, the farmers could not harvest, or where they could harvest using family labor, they couldn't transport it to the markets. And even if they succeeded to transport it to markets, there were no buyers for it. So this was a situation created by the total unplanned, unprepared kind of a lockdown. And the central government is totally responsible for creating this situation. If you look at the first 23 days of lockdown, compare it with the last year, same period, the wheat arrivals in the market were only 6% of what had arrived in the last year. So naturally, the incomes of farmers dipped in a big way. The dairy farmers lost incomes in a big way. 10 to 15 rupees lower per liter was only being given. Vegetables, perishables, fruits, huge losses suffered by them because there were no buyers. So in such a circumstance, all sections lost their incomes: farmers, agriculture workers, unorganized sector workers, every section lost their incomes. This government did nothing to stand and provide relief to these sections. So organizations like All India Kisan Sabha, the trade unions, the agriculture workers union, different groups of Dalits, Adivasi organizations, all of them came with a demand that at least 10,000 rupees should be given as an income support in these times to all non-tax paying poor people. It was demanded that loans should be waived, that the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, the installment should be increased to at least 6,000 rupees and to 18,000 in a year. Food security should be ensured with all essentials like pulses, sugar, salt, and other essentials required by a family being provided. More employment under NREGA, and if there is no employment, unemployment wages. Nothing of this sort was done. And instead, the government gave huge concessions, thousands of crores of concessions to the corporate sector. That is what we have seen. It is in such a circumstance of total distress that the rural sector was going through that the BJP government suddenly came up with the three ordinances, farm ordinances, and claimed that Indian farmers had not got independence on 15th August 1947. Narendra Modi has granted them independence or freedom to sell anywhere in India only in June first week 2020. What audacity! They have betrayed the freedom struggle, and here they claim now they are the ones who have given freedom to the farmers. This is much farther from the truth. Actually, farmers have been selling wherever they have wanted. There were no restrictions that they cannot sell outside a particular space. That was not the case at all, because even the APMCs and all that, our demand has been to expand the market system so that access is there for all farmers. That has not been done by these governments. Not only this government, earlier governments also are culpable of that. It is in such circumstances that these three ordinances were brought and later, in an undemocratic manner, pushed through the parliament. We all saw how MPs who raised, they wanted to move statutory resolutions, amendments, nothing was allowed, and 8 MPs, including the Kisan Sabha Joint Secretary KK Ragesh, the trade union Vice President Comrade Karim, and others were suspended from the Rajya Sabha. So these three bills, why is this protest against it? The farmers of our country have very, whether the nitty-gritties of it could be understood or not, the main essence of it, every farmer is understanding that this is essentially to promote the profiteering by Adanis and Ambanis, the corporate companies. What are these three acts? They have very attractive names. The BJP from beginning has this thing of attractively naming different projects, many of them old policies, which are in old wine in new bottle, with Pradhan Mantri or Prime Minister added before it, or some of them with Deen Dayal Upadhyay added before the policies. So here you have the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act. That is one. You have the Farmers Empowerment, Protection, Agreement of Price Assurance and Farm Services Act, and also Essential Services Amendment Act. So these are the three acts in which are contentious, and also the changes proposed to the Electricity Act, amendments proposed. So these names of these acts, even Narendra Modi cannot remember it without looking, cannot probably mention it without looking into it. But to put it simply, what are these acts? One is in North India, very simply, the farmers say, Mandi Thodo, corporate loot badao. That is, finish off the regulated markets and promote corporate loot. That is, the farmers are pushed into the mercy of, put at the mercy of the corporate companies, big agri businesses. The government claims now farmers can sell anywhere. They will not be exploited by middlemen in APMCs. And who will help them? Who will provide them better prices? The Adanis and Ambanis of our country. In 91, when the neoliberal economic policies were brought in, the then ruling classes, the Congress, even the BJP competed to claim that it was their policies that Congress was implementing. They claimed that farmers of India will get the international market prices. Few rich farmer organizations like the Shetkari Sangatana of the Sharad Joshi, they also supported it, claiming that it will benefit our farmers. But we know what has happened in the last almost 3 decades. Conservative estimates say about 4 lakh farmers have committed suicide. Now some journalists, over-enthusiastic journalists, claim that this is the 1991 moment for Indian farmers. They forget that the 1991 moment for Indian farmers has led to death, distressed farmer suicides of more than 4 lakh people. 400,000 people committing suicide. Conservative estimates, it's much bigger, because landless farmers, women, Adivasi, Dalit farmers often don't come within these records. Many states are even fudging data. So that is this is to finish off the regulated markets, gradually withdraw from procurement. Is it something which has just emerged in Narendra Modi's head recently? It is actually the dictates of the IMF, World Bank, and WTO. In WTO talks from many years, even when earlier governments were there, one of the most contentious issues is these governments of America, United States of America, European Union would put pressure that the Indian government should withdraw from public stockholding, withdraw from subsidies to agriculture, food security subsidies. Those same diktats were brought forward as the Shanta Kumar Commission recommendations when Narendra Modi took over. Shanta Kumar, a BJP leader and former Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh, came with the opinion that the public stock holding, there should be privatization, FCI and all that should be gradually closed down and leave it to the private sector. Government should withdraw from all these sectors. This is the neoliberal ideas which has been going on from many years. So that is why you find the Essential Commodities Act amendment is being brought. What is it saying? That there is no, whether it is food grains, rice, wheat, oil seeds, pulses, potato and onion and such crops, no longer they can be considered essential commodities. There is no limit on which they of storage. There is no limit for its export or for processing. So these big agri-businesses, Walmart, Pepsi, Adani's and Ambani's, whatever their export limit or their whatever is required for their processing, that they are able to retain even in a crisis situation, even when there is a war, when there is a famine, there is hunger striking our own people. So this is simply put, we say it is promotion of corporate hoarding and black marketing act. That is what is going to happen. And this, I would like to say, it is not going to affect only the farmers and rural poor. The consumers are going to be affected because the prices are going to rise. Both the arguments which come with these two things, these two acts, is that farmers are going to get better prices for their produce. Let us see the examples at hand so far. In the pulses, arhar dal, in south it is called tuara or arhar dal, is a popularly used pulse. It is produced in many parts of India, especially in the semi-arid regions. One of the major centers of arhar dal or tuar is Gulbarga in Karnataka. Farmers there in 2014 and so on, and up to 2006, even now, while the minimum support price announced is only is about 55, now maybe it is 60, then it was 55. Farmers were getting only around 35 to 40. Let us say 40. Let us take the higher amount that they were getting, because there is no assured procurement. So it is the private traders who mostly buy these pulses. Since there is no government procurement, farmers are forced to make distress sales to the private sector. So let us say the farmers were getting 40 rupees a kg. In the market, consumers were forced to buy it at 220 rupees per kg. 180 rupees profit. Yes, you can say sorting out, polishing, packaging, and all those costs are involved. So almost, even if you say that, 150 rupees at least profit for the big agri businesses, the traders who are into it. Adani's, Ambani's, Birla's, Tata's, ITC, all of them are involved into this business. So farmers, neither were farmers were getting proper price, nor were the consumers were having to pay very high prices. Artificial scarcities can be created. They can jack up the prices. That is the direction in which this government is going. The third one is actually the farmers' empowerment, protection, agreement of price assurance, and farm services. You see, if the name, why would anyone oppose if the actual intent is that? Farmers' empowerment, protection, and protection. We all want farmers to be empowered and protected. Agreement of price assurance and Farm Services Act. In this entire act, nowhere there is mention of minimum support price being assured. So this is actually promoting corporate contract farming. And if you see, so this is promoting corporate contract farming. We also have experiences of contract farming in our country. There was the Kuppam model in Andhra Pradesh, where an Israeli-American company called BHC Agro came in and gherkin was cultivated. If I ask you what is gherkin, I am sure a large number of those who are listening will not know what is gherkin. It is a small cucumber-like a vegetable used in salads, mostly in European countries and rich houses in our country maybe. And most of us don't even, Indians don't even know what it is. But this company came in and asked the farmers to grow this. The government, state government led by Chandrababu Naidu, gave a lot of subsidy in the initial phase. Initially 100% subsidy for the equipments, drip irrigation and so on. And later, though the subsidies were gradually cut down. Initially, farmers also who were growing till then ragi and such crops, food crops, they got better prices. But gradually, the companies started dictating. There was no market outside. They would say different things. This size is not good. The shape is not good. Even in potato, the same similar. The companies which for chips, making potato chips, it is not round enough. So you get, the farmers tend to lose out in many ways. And here the contract, the government claims that this contract will be foolproof and so on. But here, if there is a dispute, the government was saying you can only go to the bureaucracy, that is the district magistrate level. You cannot go to the courts, a fundamental right. And all these three acts are actually overruling the state governments in a federal system where agriculture, according to the constitution, is essentially a state subject. So that is where has to be seen as a package. The solution being put forward by the government now is that MSP, we will put in a line on MSP, that MSP, we'll put in a line that APMCs will remain and will be strengthened and so on. But you should see, even before the three ordinances came into force, huge areas, large areas have been given, I'm sure, at pittance to different companies. The Adani Agri Logistics have already set up huge silos in some areas where instead of the Food Corporation of India, the food grains would be in about 6 to 7 states. They have already set up their shop. And even we are finding now how Geo is talking about Vijoo Krishnan and so on. So this government is actually, Narendra Modi and the government is actually behaving like puppets of Adani and Ambani, the corporate cronies that have supported them in the elections. They are paying back to these corporate cronies. It is this that the poor, simple farmers of our country have understood. They are very clear, and that is why this kind of massive protest is happening. I would like to give one or two examples before going into the protest per se. They say that end of APMC will get better prices with competition and private sector coming in and all. In 2006, Bihar done away with the APMC. You know, the paddy farmers in Bihar, rice cultivators, the minimum support price announced by the central government is around 1860 or something around that, 1800 and more per quintal. Since there is no government procurement, assured procurement or APMC mechanism, and farmers in Bihar are forced to make distress sale, not only Bihar, it's the case in other states also, Odisha, Jharkhand, Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, many other states where there is no assured procurement, forced to sell at 1,000 or 1,200 per quintal. A loss of around 600 to 800 rupees per quintal is what the farmers are, because there is no assured procurement, and they are forced to sell to these very corporate traders who are supposedly well-wishers of the farmers, whom Narendra Modi and BJP and Amit Shah claim that they will give you the best prices. So that is one example before us. The Mandsaur farmers who are protesting, once they were shot dead, some of us visited their houses. They were not working under the red flag. They were not associated with the opposition parties. They were all mostly supporters of the BJP. In some of the houses, still flags of the BJP were there. What were they demanding? They were demanding proper price for their crops. The crop they were growing was garlic. And we found in small houses sacks of garlic kept. They cannot store it for long. In the Neemach market, farmers were getting 1 rupee per kg for garlic. The cost of production, according to farmers, ranges between 33 to 35. The BJP government claimed the cost of production is only 27 per kg. Okay, let us take the BJP government's contention, 27 rupees per kg. In a hectare, even at 27 rupees per kg, the farmer in a hectare spends around more than a lakh. Much more than a lakh is spent in the for the cultivation, and 1 rupee per kg is what was available in the market. The same day, Reliance Fresh was selling garlic in Reliance Fresh outlets in Bangalore for 147 rupees a kg. And it is this Reliance and Adani whom Narendra Modi and Amit Shah is selling the idea that they are going to be your saviors. How are farmers going to believe in this? Why should farmers believe in this? So this is a situation. The corporate companies, only any crisis, whether it is a pandemic, they have no human sensitivities. You have to note, even in the worst crisis when farmers were committing suicide, some of these companies have only managed to increase their profits in a big way. In the lockdown period, we all know how Mukesh Ambani has amassed wealth and increased his wealth in this period. So that is what the farmers have seen through it, and it is that is why they are out in protest. Now the question which they are raising against these protests, it is not something which spontaneously has emerged. From June 5th onwards, we have been protesting against these ordinances. Has this government called any farmer leader for talks before these protests? Has there been a democratic discussion? Have they tried to arrive at a consensus and convince the farmers? No, they have done nothing of that sort. More than 2 months in Punjab and Haryana. Punjab and Haryana, the protests are in a bigger way happening because those are areas where there is a bigger network of market and there is greater procurement of wheat and paddy by the government agencies. So that is why it is happening. But farmers in other parts are also realizing. It was a peaceful march. They have come prepared to for a long stay because they know that this government is working at the behest of the corporate companies, Adani and Ambani. Like Gujarat farmers tell us, it is a Modani model, Modi and Adani's model of corporate loot of Jal, Jungle and Zameen, the land, water and the forests and mineral resources. So that is what we are witnessing, because under lockdown, people are being kept under lockdown. The gates are being unlocked for corporate loot. While farmers were marching with their tractors and all that peacefully, we have seen how it was received. Trenches being dug as though in borders with some warring nations, barbed wire fencing, water cannon, shipping containers being brought, boulders being put up. It is all the government, an elected government is doing this. And but we have seen how bravely the farmers, how peacefully they have dealt with it. They have come forward and they are sitting in lakhs in the borders of Delhi. Even after that, 4-5 rounds of talks have happened. The unity of the farmers have been still retained. They have not fallen for this trap that we are doing amendments. Yesterday's negotiations Amit Shah says we have some compulsions. Their compulsion is that the strings are attached and strings are held by Adanis and Ambanis of our country. What are the compulsions? When crores of farmers and agriculture workers, isn't their interest a compulsion? On November 26th, you had the working class, all working class coming out in protest. You see the manner in which this government, in a pandemic, is curtailing the labor rights of the laboring classes. 12 hours of work, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of leisure, and no cut in pay was the slogan in late 1880s in Chicago when the workers had come out on streets. It is something, these are hard-won rights of the working class and the peasantry and the farmers. That is being snatched away using the um, lockdown and pandemic excuse. There is no, this argument is not there when the BJP organizes mass meetings. Religious congregations, there is no such argument. When farmers are, why are the farmers, is it that farmers are not worried about the pandemic? They are more worried about the future of their entire um, the new future generations. Their livelihood is being attacked. That is why this kind of a resistance is coming up. The government feels that by different kinds of divisive strategy, divide and rule, they have utilized, just like the British imperialists used to use. Now they are saying these are Khalistanis behind it. Sometimes they say they are ISI agents, urban Naxals, different kind of arguments that they have come forward with. People have not listened to anything. The response to the Bharat Bandh yesterday, unprecedented. I have been involved with student activism and the Kisan Sabha now for almost um, more than 25 years now. And I've been following political developments for 10 years before that, almost 3 decades, let us say. I have never seen this kind of a solidarity between workers and the peasants. The farmers' protest has different classes. You have the richer farmers, you have poor farmers, but if you see the Punjab mobilization, a good number of them are Dalit, the most oppressed sections. They may be landless, but there are tenant cultivators. All of them understand that these three bills and the Electricity Act amendments, which will ensure that subsidies to electricity for poor, for farmers, that could be ended. All of these are being done when the big corporates are, even in the electricity sector, being given huge concessions, thousands of crores. So that is why the farmers are resolute that we are not going to accept anything other than total repeal of these acts. And this is a historic moment. Students have come out in support. Working class have come out. Women, youth, organizations of Adivasi, Dalits, they have all come out in support of the farmers. It is this very people who are out on the streets in the winter, peak winter, who even under lockdown period has ensured enough production that will create a situation wherein we are having enough food stocks for our masses. It is a duty of everyone, youth of our country, to stand in solidarity with them. And despite all kinds of efforts to disrupt this unity, despite all kinds of efforts to spread canard and false information, to stand united, and I am sure the people united will emerge victorious. This is going to lead to a new direction for the movement against the BJP governments, its undemocratic authoritarian attitude, and also work around for a alternative set of policies which will ensure proper prices for farmers, proper wages for agricultural labor, land rights for the landless sections, forest rights, and also social security measures, whether it is food security, public education, public health facilities, and pensions for the most requiring sections, most needy sections. So it is for each one of you also to look into these bills. Don't just get carried away by the Godi media or the corporate media's campaigns. They are much more resources they have than the poor farmers of our country. We are all facing different kinds of threats. There are our general secretary has been issued a notice that for having protests where why he couldn't be arrested, to seeking explanation why he should not be arrested, uh, and arrest for a long period is mentioned in it. All these are happening. We have seen yesterday during the Bharat Bandh, including our Member of Parliament and Joint Secretary of Kisan Sabha, Ragesh, the manner in which they were some of, and General Secretary of All India Democratic Women's Association, Mariam Davle, Krishna Prasad, our Secretary of Kisan Sabha, Vikram Singh, Joint Secretary of the Agriculture Workers Union, the manner in which they were dragged by the Haryana police and arrested when they were sitting peacefully in protest. They think in this manner the truth can be suppressed, protests can be suppressed, but I would just like to end by referring to what a great anti-fascist from Czechoslovakia, Julius Fuchik, who in his notes from the gallows writes that truth cannot be made to stand to attention. What can happen in the shakhas of the Sangh Parivar, where their bucks can be kept to attention or be tuned to a particular thought alone. That cannot be happen to thinking minds. That cannot happen to the masses. The truth will stare in their faces and will continue to shout out that the emperor is naked. What they are implementing is only going to lead our country into much greater distress. Thank you, friends. I really appreciate your effort for organizing this kind of a talk, and maybe I can give another 5 to 10 minutes if there is some questions coming up.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you for this wonderful lecture. So I have just two very small points which I would request you to sort of comment on. First thing is what I thought, I was reading this recent articles and the recent books by the Utsav Patnaik. So there, Professor Patnaik mentions the stance of World Bank and different financial bodies regarding land redistribution. And what I thought while reading about these farm bills is that all this contractual farming and dissolving of APMCs, slow dissolving of APMCs, is basically contrary to the land redistribution which has always been upheld by the progressive forces in our country. So I just wanted your thoughts on that. And the second point that I found interesting is that the second bill sort of mentions about giving the farmers the the right to sell outside the jurisdiction of APMC, but this was already there prior to the farm bills as well.
Yes.
But the thing is that APMC works with a tax, right? So the vendors give tax to the state government. Now, once this APMC system if it is dissolved, then I feel that the state governments, the respective state governments, can also get deprived of certain
Yes,
funds. So
correct. As far as the land question is concerned, from 91 onwards, there have been different efforts to ensure that reversal of whatever limited land reforms has happened. We all know in our country, except in a few states, where some meaningful land reforms have been attempted. In most parts, that has not happened, and still land concentration remains in few rich classes, as well as those from so-called higher castes, mainly cornering most of it. That is the situation. So different states have brought in changes in the land ceiling acts, and also allowed corporate sector to take over agriculture land. Just yesterday, Karnataka BJP government has brought in such a passed such an act, which will allow farm lands to be taken over. So that these kind of steps are going on. That is, and both these bills which have come, there have been different ways in which they have tried this before. They came with a model APMC Act that, and even the Congress governments have been equally guilty of pursuing this policy, though they are now standing with the farmers. I hope there is a change in their position, original position, and they are rectifying their position and standing with the farmers now. Then regarding not only the APMC, even the Model Tenancy Act and so on, there has been a PPP model for integrated agricultural development. In the name of that, how land pooling was suggested, wherein corporates would decide what they would grow. Farmers would just pool in land and they would get some earning. And these kind of things put forward by the World Economic Forum and such groups. Those all of them have failed. Because and the corporate sector also wants this package. It's not just, see, they are going to get cheaper produce crops from the farmers. That is one advantage with the policies brought by the government. Unlimited stocking, that is another. There is no control on that. So they are also able to rake in huge profits by jacking up prices in the market. That is what is going to happen. And also dictating what will be grown on these. When it's a contract farming, the land is the farmers, but what is grown in the farm, it is the companies which dictate how it is grown. Intensive cultivation, use of excessive chemicals, all these kind of things also come with it. The agriculture labor are going to be displaced in a big way. So that is something which, so the land, their eye is on the land. In all these cases, takeover of farm land is also an important issue here. The second thing which Priyan was mentioning, once, just would you remind me once again, Priyan?
Yes. So it was about APMC. If dissolved, then the state, respective state government.
What will happen to the state government revenues? You see, already the central government is trying to concentrate all powers into its hands. You have the GST. Now, even in a crisis situation, pandemic situation, when states are in the forefront of fighting against a pandemic, we are having a situation where the GST share of states are not being given to them. Now, in a federal system where agriculture is a state subject, even the APMC tax, Mandi tax, which they call here, that is being denied to them. So their revenues would be reduced in a big way. So naturally, that is one opinion that states like Punjab have in this thing, and that is a prerogative of the state governments, which they are now infringing upon. Thank you for the question. I should have brought in my when I was speaking itself.
So a person has asked, what are the amendments which the government is suggesting? Do they make any difference, or are they just gimmicks?
So they are just window dressing. That's all. It's nothing going to because they want this system change that they are trying to bring. They are not wanting to go back from it. They are just telling, okay, even the private markets, some tax we can allow, and we are not going to close down the APMCs. We'll expand the APMCs and so on. But nothing concrete coming from all this. Essential Commodities Act remains. They are saying, okay, in case of disputes, even you can go to the civil courts. That is as though it's a big concession. That was a democratic right. It's a constitutionally guaranteed right. So nothing new they have come up with. And farmers' organizations are right in being united, saying that the entire package has to go. Lock, stock, and barrel. I think I would just try to conclude with one or two other examples of how those who are presented as the saviors of our farmers, what is the manner in which they are profiteering? I would like to bring in. See, there is this coffee. Farmers cultivating coffee in our country, they are getting around 130 rupees per kg for coffee bean. Nestle Blend 37 is being sold at 12,000 rupees a kg. Let us say 130, 1 kg of coffee bean is not enough. About 4 kg of coffee bean is enough, is required for making 1 kg. Then also it should cost around 500 rupees plus processing, etc. But 12,000 rupees per kg, which on Amazon with a hefty discount is available for around 7,000 rupees. So you see the kind of profiteering, and whenever there is a price crash in the global market, that burden is being put on the shoulders of farmer. But when there is a global prices rise, neither do the farmers benefit accordingly. Here, Narendra Modi and his team are arguing that farmers have the freedom, and they are saying that someone in Nagaland can come and sell in Kerala. Whom are they trying to fool? We have to think logically. If it is possible for our poor farmer from rural Nagaland to come and sell in Gujarat or in Kerala or other places, that is something to be also thought about. So these are all a farcical effort to cover up the actual intention of helping corporate companies to profiteer. That is why the compulsion that Amit Shah yesterday mentioned about is that they are pulled by strings held by Adanis, Ambanis, and their ilk. Thank you, friends. And it has been a good interacting to all of you.